This episode of the Leadville 100 podcast is going to a dark place. That place where we can all end up when things get really bad. For me, the black hole is usually right in the pavement section between the pipeline aid station and the beginning of the power line climb. People who race the dirty cans at 200 say it's somewhere between mile 140 and 180. And for everyone in any endurance race, it's out there. It's just a matter of how to get to the other side, or better yet, if you can somehow avoid it.
Which is why it is so important that during the days leading into your big event, you remain calm and relaxed. And a good way to do that is supplement with some of the Floyd's of Leadville products like we do. The capsules in particular have just enough CBD, 50 milligrams, to take the edge off what is a stressful week. Look, I'm not racing this time, but I am crewing for Fatty, and that means I am under the gun to perform. You better believe I will be calming the mind that week with some Floyd's of Leadville CBD.
I was just thinking, it is probably more stressful to crew for me than it is to race. Feel sorry for you, Hottie. So anyway, be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor, at floydsofleadville.com. And be sure to use the code FATTY at checkout for 15% discount on your first 2 orders.
And thanks, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race powered by Floyd's of Leadville. I said powered by, didn't I?
I like powered by.
I like powered by.
Keep it.
Here we've been saying presented by the whole time. No, we're powered by Floyd's of Leadville. This is a season 2 you're listening to, and this is episode 20 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. And Fatty, I'm going to be driving what feels like halfway across the country to get to Leadville. I will be leaving West Fir, Oregon, the Sunday before the race for Leadville. I'm in Oregon for the Cascade Cream Puff with my sister and brother-in-law, 50-mile race there.
Mm-hmm.
But after, it's going to be like an 18-hour drive with me going to Boise, then Moab, and finally to Leadville. But if any of our Oregon listeners have a secret driving route and they would like to share, please give me a shout.
You know, I'm going to be doing some traveling too, but my drive is a little bit easier than yours. It's a mere 7 hours. But both of us, and in fact, almost everyone coming to Leadville either to crew or to race, is going to be hitting the road. And that is why we are going to be hearing from our nutrition expert, Roxanne Vogel, on keeping your eating clean while you are away from your normal routine.
You know what I forgot to ask Roxanne, was how to fuel for a 10K run, because that is one of the reasons I'm going to Leadville. This person, this fool right here you're listening to, has decided to line it up with the Lead women, like Lisa the Hammer, and the Lead men, and do one of their mandatory races, the 10K. So if you're up for it, join us for that 10K at 10K the morning after the Trail 100 mountain bike race.
Hottie, between that 10K at 10K you're doing with the Hammer and our sold-out Q&A live show we're recording on the Wednesday night before the race, we are going to be absolutely monopolizing our listeners' time both before and after the Leadville 100. But I've got one more thing, something you and I have actually talked about before, and I have finally got the details for.
Oh, I know what this is. It's that Columbine ride you've been trying to get me to do for years.
It is. And now you're going to have to do it. It is the Wednesday before the race, 1 p.m., and you and I are going to be leading a casual, conversational ride to the turnaround spot on Columbine Mine. And there we're going to talk for a few minutes, take some pictures, and then ride back down. The way back is easy. Listeners can go to bit.ly/Columbine Ride to get tickets for it. And that's important because our sponsor, The Feed, will be giving a free bottle and hydration kit to every ticket holder. And tickets are free, of course.
The inside joke here, folks, is, for years, Fatty and I agree on a lot of things, but the one area we've kind of disagreed on is whether or not you ride Columbine in the week before the Leadville race. I've always taken the stance that you don't need to, and Fatty, of course, believes in it. So you can ask me more about that as we're standing at the top of Columbine Mine. Why I never go up there the week of the race when I'm standing up there the week of the race. And then after the ride, we're going to meet over at Floyd's of Leadville, and they're going to give everyone recovery drinks and Morton products, and our Leadville box will be available to purchase there as well. It'll be a great chance to try out some of the products you and I really like. Now, Fatty, what if it rains or looks like it might?
Automatically canceled, Hottie. We're not going to be bold. We're not going to be brave on that day. It's Wednesday before the race, and we are not going to get people soaked and sick a few days before the race. I do not want that on my conscience.
And of course, Strava. What about PRs, KOMs? You going for those?
No, this is just the opposite. My rule for this ride is if I'm going so hard that I cannot chat with the listeners, I'm going to back off. Everyone is welcome, of course, to go at their own speed. Mine, personally, is going to be as casual as it is possible to be at 12,000 feet.
Yeah, in all honesty, I'm looking forward to meeting everyone on the Columbine climb. I'm just glad don't have to race up it this year. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's the whole point of this, as well as to see what what a lot of people see as the crux of the course before the day of the race. So go get your ticket. And details about when and where we are starting. I've given the latitude and longitude. It's the easiest way to do this, folks. And you can get, and I think I also did put up a link to Google Maps for where we are parking at bit.ly/Columbine Ride. Anyone who's ever met Hottie or me knows we both love podcasts, and not just recording them either. You and I both listen to a lot of podcasts, and every single week I think you and I are texting each other about great podcast finds.
That's right. And I think we ought to let our listeners know about a new podcast. One of our sponsors, Envy, has just launched. It's the Inside Envy podcast.
Yeah, and as the day we are recording right here, right now, it just came out. And they did the smart thing and launched with 4 full-sized episodes, so about 4.5 hours of content, I think, as well as a brief Hello World type episode introducing the main characters of the show.
And it's a pretty impressive cast, by the way, Fatty, including Jake Pantone, who's been on this show. Yep. He's been with Envy since straight out of college and knows really everything there is to know about wheels and carbon, as well as a friend of mine, Neil Shirley, a very well-known racer and former cycling journalist who knows the cycling industry inside and out.
Yep, and they are promising to give us sort of a short behind-the-scenes peek into the company and industry, as well as the athletes in it. So, interesting podcast for the kind of people who like this show. So far, I've just had time to listen to one of the episodes. I checked out the one on the evolution of road cycling, and I'm looking forward to listening to more.
Yeah, I went straight for the Dirty Kansas episode because I think I might want to do that event someday. And it was good to hear from Neil Shirley, who's done the event quite a few times, and the Envy guys as well, who are behind DK in a big way, too. They're the official wheel sponsor of that race. So good info on that show. And listeners can find that new Envy podcast over at envy.com. Just click the Inside Envy link, and you'll find ways you can subscribe to it there. While you're there, you can also learn more about all of Envy's wheels and components, many of which seem like they're made with the Leadville 100 in mind, but which can pretty much handle anything you throw at them on any terrain at Envy, that's ENVE.com.
Hottie, you and I are both pretty positive people. Both in the show and in real life. So I think we've been a little bit reluctant to talk about when things get bad.
Like when you crash or have a mechanical or bonk?
Yeah, for sure those can be contributors to what I'm thinking about, but I'm talking more and more about something harder to deal with. Because unlike a lot of what you and I usually talk about in this show, there's no problem-solution pairing here. Like when you get a flat, you fix a flat. When you bonk, you eat more or better and back off on your effort. But what about when you find yourself in what I'm going to call the dark place? When you're really facing down demons, what do? How do you cope with a despair during a big race?
Yeah, if you were to come across me in a race, Fatty, you come across one of three people. There's Happy Hottie, who's chatting and talking to other folks in the race, maybe to myself a little bit. There's Silent Hottie, which can mean anything. Just kind of stay away from that Hottie. Or there's Shout and Yell and Scream Hottie, and that's when I'm in my dark place. That usually means I'm grunting and grinding and trying to get myself out of that dark hole.
So when you're in a dark place, you get loud. I get super withdrawn and silent. I don't think I will ever forget the first time I hoped for a sub-9 finish of this race. I had a great start, and I came within a few minutes of hitting my turnaround time, a little bit behind it at Columbine Mine. And then I got to Twin Lakes, and I wasn't feeling great. And up that short paved stretch, you know what I'm talking about. And I just slowed way down. I wasn't bonking per se, but my power was only sort of halfway there. But I just couldn't go any faster, and I was watching my objective slip away. For the next 10 or 15 miles, I despaired. It wasn't a bonk. It wasn't even exhaustion. It was just like this really terrible, like self-loathing, a sense of I was an imposter, that I was a fool for being out there and doing something so badly. And I was like, well, what am I doing here among all these racers? How did I come out here so badly prepared? I'm not kidding, Hottie, when I say it was a really dark place.
Yeah, Fatty, I got there once too, similar circumstances, although much earlier in the Leadville 100. And it did lead me to something quite embarrassing, which is I pulled out of the thing. I started going backwards in the Leadville 100. I got to Twin Lakes and said, that's it. Now, I don't know that I was in a super dark place at that moment. I think if I was, because it was so early in the race, right? It was so early. How could you be that bad by Twin Lakes outbound? I was just going backwards and thought, what is going on here? This is ridiculous. I must be screwing something up, and pulled out. Other times, though, I have powered through them by using the technique I talked about. For instance, the Chino grinder this year. I was about mile 100 of 115 and headed for home, and you're hoping it's going to be a nice cruise downhill. Ran into some washboard and some headwind and was alone, and turned to my good old yell and scream and cuss out the course. Got into my dark place and suffered along.
Man. You do what you got to do, right? And I've heard before that that there is a meaningful effect of lessening pain by swearing and yelling. That it is a good way to sort of catalyze it. I know that Bryson Perry, I talked with him recently at the Silver Rush, and this guy has won the race a couple of times, and he says he knows what I'm talking about. That there have been times, he says, when he was doing this race that he almost abandoned himself, not because he couldn't go on, but because he didn't feel like he should, or that he was worthy of doing it, oddly enough. He says he actually stopped at an aid station for more than 20 minutes once. And this wasn't a bonk either. It was despair.
Okay, then, so how do you deal with it?
Well, I personally deal with it a couple of ways. The first one is I try to actually see it from outside my perspective. I have a little mini out-of-body experience. I'm aware of what's going on enough, self-aware enough that even at my worst, I'm able to think, okay, here you are at this thing you look forward to every year. You can't even sleep through the night before because you're so excited for it. And you tell everyone about this race all the time, and now you hate it and you want to quit. And how is that even possible, right? And somehow that irony, the sort of grim humor, this ridiculousness that I'm aware of myself, having that kind of momentary perspective, it helps. I don't feel great, but I can keep going. And the next thing I like to do is remember that any big race is you're building a story. We are creating this. We are creating a story that we are going to tell, And I love stories. And anyone who has read my blog for a dozen years or listens to this show knows I love stories more than just about anything. And I think most of us do. And you know that there's no such thing as a good story that has nothing but high after high. If this race didn't have something you had to overcome, if it didn't bring out your demons, if there was no villain in the story, who would even want to hear it, right? So I remind myself, this isn't a story without a villain. This is my story. This is the part right here that matters. And this is the part I'm going to be telling people about. It's not often that you get to make yourself the hero of a story, but at the Leadville 100, when things are bad, this is your moment. You get to be the hero. If you hold on through that terrible valley, you confront your demons. At the end, other side, you're going to have an amazing story to tell at the end of the day. And then finally, I do a couple of practical things. I eat, I drink, I back off just a little bit, 5% for 1 minute. And it is amazing how little it takes to feel better. There's a physical component to despair, to feeling like you're, an imposter and just having a terrible time out there. Your heart or your legs or your lungs or your stomach are telling your brain something, and your conscious part just isn't hearing it. You take care of yourself, and things are going to get better. How about you, Hottie?
Well, hopefully, Mrs. Hottie is there to help me. She is my savior. And I'll tell you why. It happened at Leadville, in fact. I was pacing a friend of mine, and we were coming back from Twin Lakes to a pipeline feed. And Mrs. Hottie had finished her duties at Twin Lakes and hopscotched ahead of us and was there to meet us at pipeline. And on my way to pipeline, I thought, this is it. I don't know how I'm going to keep pedaling on. I'm trying to break the wind for somebody. I'm trying to pace them. I feel awful. The day wasn't going right either. We were not making our times. I thought, this is awful. This is it. I have no more. And we got to pipeline, and there she was. And I looked her right in the face and said, I think I want to stop. And she looked back at me and went, no, just keep going. See what happens. Go to power line. Yeah, just go to power line and go up it. But she said, no, just keep going and see what happens. And I did. I mounted up and rode away from her. And we got onto the power line climb, and I continued to have a good day. And in fact, helped my friend get on the podium by sticking with it. So
wow,
the dark place doesn't always mean the end, and there's usually a way out. Now, not everyone can have a Mrs. Hottie sitting there. I get that. But this would be my advice. Just get to the next stop. If you are in that dark place, and there's enough stops at Leadville that if you can just convince yourself, just get to the next stop. Just get there and see somebody and talk to somebody, look somebody in the eye, be honest with them. Say, I'm having an awful day. You never know. They may give you some feedback. They may give you some food. They may give you a kick in the rear. I'll push out the feed zone, something that'll get you going. So my advice there is just get to the next. If you're in that dark place, just get to that next stop.
Yeah, that is super good advice, Hottie. And listening to someone who is not one of your demons, someone who is one of your angels, like Mrs. Hottie, that is exactly right. That is the voice that you want to listen to. So my final thoughts on this. I don't know if everyone experiences these during long races. I kind of expect that most of us do at some point. I know I don't every race, but it does happen often enough, and certainly enough during the Leadville 100. I want to say this. Recognize this sense for what it is. It's your race demons. It's despair. It's a mental bonk. Call it whatever you want. Whatever it is, you don't have to give in to it. Keep going, get to the next aid station, talk to someone else, and at the other side, you're going to have an incredible story to tell.
All right, Fatty, since this is a show about despair, going into a dark place during your big race, let's keep the negativity going and talk about flats. And for this segment, like we do a lot on the show, we will combine sponsorship, story, and stuff you can use. So first, the sponsor element. No matter what your flat repair setup is, please stuff it all in a Banjo Brothers bag.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. 2 for 2 for you on this one, Hottie. You know, I run the small seat bag. Banjo Brothers has many other sizes. I think 3 additional sizes. If you need to carry less or more than I do, you're going to be all set. They have a mini 33 cubic inch one. My small is 40. The medium or large are expandable. It can hold, your next door neighbor. They hold a ton.
They also have top tube bags if you want to carry a second tube and keep it away from the dirt and dust. All Banjo Brother bags are super secure with zippers that are sealed and stay shut, and Velcro that holds on for dear life as you slam down the Sugarloaf descent on your way to that Leadville buckle.
Yeah. And I've never lost a Banjo Brothers bag in, I think, 15 plus years that they've been around. They've never jettisoned on me. Can't say that for most other things. You can get 15% off your order by going to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites. Banjo Brothers is tough, practical, affordable. They're based in Minneapolis, and they've been in business since 2003, 16 years now. Good job. And they're good guys. Get 15% off your order once again by going to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites.
Okay, back to the negativity of the show, the down moments, desperation, and in this case, a sudden loss of inflation. Like my little mountain bike poetry there.
Oh,
desperation, inflation. We're talking what the French call crevaison. The Brits label a puncture, and here in the States, it's a flat. Whatever you call it, in the middle of a race, it sucks.
Yeah.
Fatty, or should I say flatty in this case, you famously said in one of the Race Across the Sky movies that you would count the flats coming down the power line, and that number was always greater than 5. I believe that's your quote.
Yeah.
But how about you? Have you ever pulled to the side of the trail at Leadville with the dreaded flat?
Well, I've had flats in Leadville, not during the Leadville 100, luckily. I mean, which is actually pretty remarkable when you consider how many times I've done this. But you remember last year at Silver Rush, I had an enormous amount of trouble with flats. And a lot of that trouble had to do with me panicking and compounding my problems by not taking a deep breath, not being practiced with flat changes on the new bike that I had, and not putting stuff away. So my big tip for flats, be prepared, practice, and be calm when you are fixing that flat. It is hard not to rush and panic and go as fast as you can, but it is one moment during a race that you cannot afford to go fast.
Well, I'll say that I've had a semi-flat at Leadville. It wasn't your traditional puncture. I was going up Columbine, and again, I was pacing somebody, again with the pacing stuff, and another rider came in behind me and said, "Hey, buddy, it looks like you're getting a little soft on your rear tire." And I gave it the old bounce test, and sure enough, I was starting to lose air in the back tire. My buddy who I was pacing said, "Why don't you ride up ahead to the top of the mountain, see if you can get that thing fixed, and then I'll meet you on the descent." Great. Good idea. So I rolled on up ahead of him because I could go a little faster than him up going uphill. Got to the top of Columbine. As I got to that turnaround, I'm yelling as I come into that pit there, which you're not supposed to stop at. That's Fatty and I's advice about that pit. But here I needed them. I was yelling, "Pump, pump, pump, pump." I needed a pump. I wasn't, again, I wasn't punctured. I wasn't losing air quickly. It was just a slow leak. And I thought, well, maybe the sealant has got it and I can just go ahead and reinflate and be on my way. Got to the top there, pulled over. Somebody came running to my side. I said, "Do you have a floor pump?" Because I wanted a floor pump, something I could work quickly with as opposed to digging around for my CO2 or what have you. The volunteer went and rustled something out. He came back, I believe, with a hand pump. I said, "No, how about a floor pump?" We're at an aid station, aren't we? They're great people. Don't get me wrong. The Leadville people are great. The volunteers are great. But this was kind of one of those odd circumstances. He did return with what I thought was a floor pump. It kind of worked. I got it hooked up for a few seconds. It wasn't doing a great job. In the end, I went to the CO2, blasted my tire. By this time, my partner had made the turnaround and was already headed down. I started running down Columbine. About halfway down, I was going soft again, pulled over, hit it with some more CO2. Got to Twin Lakes. My partner had already made it through. Mrs. Hottie was there. I said, "Geez, where's Greg? He's up ahead." All right. I said, "Look, I've been going flat. I've had to pull over a couple of times." I said, "Meet me at Pipeline with the spare wheels. I think I'm good for now." So I remounted at Twin Lakes, went to Pipeline, And out of an abundance of caution, I switched out the rear wheel and then eventually caught my partner and we finished the day. I later figured out that on Columbine Climb, on the climb, my rim tape decided to fail.
Oh.
Exactly.
What a terrible time for that.
I know. Again, I was lucky to have spare wheels so I could just eliminate the issue, even though I didn't know at the time what it was. That said, spares are a luxury, and most racers will be left to what they carry in their Banjo Brothers bag.
Mm-hmm.
So, Fatty, what do you have stuffed inside that seat bag again for the dreaded flat?
Yeah, so in the small seat bag that I have, and you're going to be astonished at how much I can fit. 2 Tubolito tubes, okay, so that's 2 tubes, 2 20-gram CO2 canisters, a Silca chuck, we're both big fans of Silca here, a small multi-tool, and a Silca lever, enough so that I can take care of 2 complete flats.
Yeah, so like 75% of the stuff in your seat bag is dedicated to flat repair, which is great, right?
Yep.
And my bag looks similar. 2 tire levers, because you never know. I like to have an extra one for whatever, prying open my mouth if I need to or whatever, right? But, you might break one. They're good. They're good little tools.
That's true.
And also for breaking a bead. I have a 29er tube that I have previously inflated and inspected. Tubes can
that's
rot.
smart.
Yeah, and they develop cracks, and there's nothing more embarrassing than pulling one out and going, well, I have a tube, and oh no, it's got a hole too. I've seen that. I carry a 2 25-gram CO2s, a little more volume there. I also carry a small valve core tool and a spare valve core. I don't know, just in case. Maybe I can hand it to somebody. Maybe the thing fails. A little extra valve core. Those things are a little wonky at times. You might butcher one as you're reinflating a tire. You can always toss one back in. I also carry the Park Tools, Park Tire Boot. I love those things. They have the adhesive on them already. You just peel the backing off. You slap it in if you've got a big slash and you need the extra protection from to protect your tube should you get a big slash in your tire. Those Park Tool tire boots are just the bomb. I love those things. What I have not tried yet, at least not yet, on a mountain bike is one of those canisters full of sealant and CO2. There's Vittoria's Pit Stop. Effetto Mariposa has its Espresso Doppio cartridge. Hutcherson has the Fast Air. And there's a relative new kid on the block that I ran into at Sea Otter. Here's a discussion with a new product you may be interested in carrying at the Leadville Trail 100.
My name's Thomas Patrico, and I am the owner of Goop Industries.
Goop Industries, not to be mistaken with the company owned by said actress?
Said actress, exactly, yeah. Different spelling, same pronunciation.
Okay. Goop Industries. I've been noticing these blue cans as I'm riding around once in a while hanging off seat posts of bicycles, and I've just been wondering, what am I missing here? I've obviously not got something right because I'm seeing more and more of them. Tell me, you're holding one of these cans. What is in that can? What is it? What can it do for me?
We get that a lot too. We get people asking us, is that shaving or sunscreen shaving cream? What is it? So it's kind of a fun conversation starter when you're seeing people on the trail side. But it's a eco-friendly foaming latex, and it's basically a sealant and air all in one. It injects straight through the valve. You don't need to remove the valve core, and it's just meant to get people back in the race and have them maintain some level of competitiveness without having to hopefully DNF. So just a kind of a backup parachute to their current setup, and simultaneously seals and inflates the tire.
So specifically designed for tubeless, although will work in a tube tire or a tubular if you happen to be running mountain tubulars.
Exactly.
I gather, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much all applications as far as tire types are concerned. So tell me how it works. I mean, I get a flat, I'm climbing St. Kevin's at Leadville. Psst, I get the flat. What do I do?
Sure. So you just pull over, and we always tell people, the best application is to just put the wheel between your legs as if you're using a traditional pump. And use both hands. One hand will actually pull up on the blue canister, and the other hand simultaneously will push down on the yellow top. So you're kind of pushing and pulling at the same time with the valve at the 12 o'clock position, at the highest point of the wheel. Mm-hmm. So what will happen then, the harder you push and pull, the faster the air and sealant can flow through the valve. which is especially critical if you're trying to actually reseat the tire, because it can, if you burp a tire out on the course or during a race, you can actually pop the bead back on and inject more sealant at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Give me your best time. What's the best you've done getting back and running using goop?
Sure, it's case by case depending on the puncture, of course. And a lot of guys just use it as a top off as well. So if you have a small pin size hole, you may not need to use the whole can. You can get a little bit of it and it'll get you going. Bigger holes, you can exhaust the whole can maybe 15 seconds, if that. You can really, if you're doing the application correctly, you can really get all the sealant and air in there as quickly as possible. So 15 seconds and then you're out on course. Because we always tell people also it's best to fill it and then spin the wheel, and if you can get rolling, it's great, because then it kind of mixes in with the dirt or the soil and creates almost like a scab effect, so it helps it dry and seal that much faster.
A healing solution all in one there too. So lots of different sealant brands out there. There's Stans and Orange Seal and all the name. Does it play well with all the sealants out there?
It does. So we tested it with it is a latex based one, so we tested it with those and it works great. We also tested it with the non-latex products, and we had no negative side effects, and it worked great as well. So safe to say it's compatible with most sealants. We haven't tested them all, but most.
Right. And my carbon rims, I'm worried about my carbon rims. Are we okay there?
We're okay there as well, yeah.
Okay, and how much does a can cost me?
Per can, $14.99 retail, and then we have the holster, and that's sold for $3.99. So always good to have, and just keeps the can on there. You can kind of set it and forget it until you need it.
All right, well, there you go, Leadvillers. Maybe a good choice for you to carry a can of goop on race day, and it could keep your belt buckle hopes alive. Yeah, the folks at Goop say the foaming action is also effective on sidewall tears and cuts up to 6 millimeters. That's a pretty sizable cut.
That is.
What about a good old-fashioned hand pump, though? I carry one all the time in training, but that's one of those things on race day I go without.
Yeah, I actually just bought a small pump that incorporates a CO2 canister, so you can do both or either. I was trying to see whether there might be a place for this in my setup, like, it's just stuffed into my USWE pack or attached to the frame. But to be honest, I'm hopeful that I will never need more than what I've got in my Banjo Brothers seat bag between any two aid stations. Remember, you're never more than 20 miles from an aid station in this race. If I need something to fix a third flat, I'm having a really bad day. Mm-hmm. And I'll finish up by saying, I'm spending some additional time, and so is my wife. I'm making her do this between now and the race, getting more experienced with using tire plugs, which are great for flats. And I am not very experienced in those, and so I want some time practicing with them. And I haven't tried Goop or any of the related kinds of products that bring sealant and air into your tire at the same time. But I think it's a great idea, and it's something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, bottom line is the flat is the most common mechanical problem in any bicycle event, especially mountain biking. So know your stuff, know how to use it, be prepared, and get ready to roll and do your flat repair should you need to.
Eating's a big part of not just race day, but of the entire trip to Leadville. Our nutrition expert, Roxanne Vogel, is here with tips on how to stay on your nutrition target when you're on the road. Roxy, welcome back to the Leadville podcast.
Thanks, Patty. Always good to be here.
Great to have you here. Now, we are getting close to the time when I load up my trucks so that I look like the Beverly Hillbillies with every bike I own and every biking clothing article I own, and frankly, all of the gels and all of the drink mix I have and everything, and start getting ready for the long drive. And some people have a long flight out to Leadville. For myself, this is when things sort of start to go sideways for me and my stomach. When I leave home and head out to Leadville, stay for a week before the race to kind of get used to the altitude, and I'm eating different. And my stomach starts feeling a little bit off. And I don't think that that's super unusual. How can racers set themselves up for success? In other words, I guess you might say, for GI success as they head out to Leadville?
Yeah, that is a great question, and something I get really frequently from a lot of athletes I work with is, how do you travel, be on the road before events and sort of stay on track with your nutrition plan? And there are definitely a few strategies that you can implement to help you feel your best, even if you're not in your hometown or around your customary foods. So, first of all, I always, always, always recommend athletes take as much with them as is feasible. So, it depends on how you're traveling, obviously, and where you're traveling to. But if you can take some of your favorite snacks or, even some things in a cooler if you're driving somewhere, that will help because, then you don't have to stop at like a roadside gas station. You don't have to be at the airport scrounging around for a decent food source there. Just having something with you that you already know you tolerate well, that goes a long way just to get you to wherever it is that you're heading off to. And then I'd say the next best strategy is to try and get a place with a kitchen, ideally. I mean, especially if you're going to be there a good few days or a week before your event, try and get something that at least has a fridge, maybe a microwave so you can cook something, or the best case scenario that actually has a kitchen so you can prepare your own food. Because like the worst thing to do is the night before a big pasta dinner, stuff you don't normally eat, you just hit the buffet and then it sits like a rock in your stomach overnight. And then you wake up race day and you're just like, I feel terrible, And that happens all too often just because it's the free pizza buffet. Why wouldn't you? But it's just such a bad idea on so many levels. So if you can find a place where you can prepare your own meals or at least like some semblance of them, like even if you take a Tupperware and are able to just microwave your meal, that is great because, then you can eat things that you already are familiar with.
Mm-hmm. So we're in Leadville. Let's say we have a place, Roxanne, and you and I are going grocery shopping. Let's go grocery shopping. And actually, there is a Safeway in town at Leadville. Not great. It usually gets run over pretty harsh. There's a Whole Foods not down about an hour out of town in Frisco. So let's go into the grocery store, Roxanne. Where are you taking me? What aisles are we going down together?
Okay, so I know exactly which two stores you're talking about because those are the ones that I hit up. I will warn listeners that by the time you get into town, probably all the produce is going to be gone from the Safeway in town. So do stop at that either Whole Foods or there's like even a Walmart right there in Frisco right after you get off of 70. Definitely hit that place up first. I'm just giving you that warning. But yeah, if we're going in, I'd say, you want to get probably some oats or some type of like a quinoa flake hot breakfast, something like that. So you can make overnight oats because that's one of the easiest things I know for athletes to make on the road. What I usually do is do a serving of oats or your whatever hot breakfast you want to make. Put that with a little bit of recovery drink mix and some almond milk or your non-dairy or dairy beverage of choice. Some fruit, so some berries, whatever kind of fruit you want, maybe a little chia seed, put that in the fridge overnight. That is race day breakfast. So definitely getting some of that. I'm going to encourage you to kind of stay away from a lot of the raw veggies unless you're going to be able to cook them because, anything in the last few days before you eat, you want to start to eat like a baby. So keep it as simple and as starchy as you can. So not the time to be eating like your giant salads, which any other time is great. I highly recommend veggies all day, but, make sure if you are getting veggies, they're going to be well cooked. Get your lean protein sources, less legs, the better for digestion at this point. So maybe thinking of fish or chicken or eggs, things that are going to take a little less time to break down so they can clear from your system more quickly. And finally, lots and lots of fluids. At this point, you don't have to be super picky. I would stay away from alcohol, obviously. We're not going down that aisle, maybe after the race, but, making sure you have plenty of fluids so that you're able to want to drink and not just have to force yourself to drink. So I even like coconut water, as long as it's just kind of plain coconut water, stuff like that. Hydration, electrolytes, just regular water. All of those are great.
Fatty likes to famously bring an espresso machine, and I drink coffee like, by the jugfuls. So, again, Leadville, it's a week before the race. We're shopping. We plan to have coffee. Are there any restrictions you see with caffeine as far as being at altitude?
As far as being at altitude, no, not really. If you tolerate caffeine well, then you're going to tolerate it well at altitude as well. Some people like to do, a period of restriction before a big event where they cut back on caffeine so they are more sensitive to its effects when they actually start taking it again on race day. And that's fine as well. That does tend to help for some people. It is not necessary, however, if you are well habituated to drinking caffeine all the time, which it sounds like you are, Hottie. I am too. Yeah. So, I definitely, on a personal level, I just drink caffeine straight through. And as long as you tolerate it well, then it's fine to have that good 2 cups or whatever you're used to drinking in the morning before the race. And then, continue to take it throughout the race. So caffeine is a performance enhancer. It is well researched, generally well tolerated, unless you're taking just way too much or you don't process caffeine well. But you would probably already know that by this point if you don't.
All right, Fatty, some good tips there from Roxanne on travel and keeping up with your nutrition. One of my big takeaways was BYOF, bring your own food. Did I get that right? BYOF. Yeah, bring your own food. That's right. And if you can, score a place in Leadville with a kitchen. Now, if we're going grocery shopping, some good tips here from Roxanne. I love some of this stuff. First of all, you want to plan out that race day breakfast: oats, a non-dairy, creamer of some sort, berries, chia seed, little fat for that race day breakfast. So if you're shopping, make sure you grab some of that. Stay away, actually, from raw veggies. I know it's kind of a shocker here. If you do get the veggies, make sure you're cooked. According to Roxanne, you want to eat like a baby. So everything should be easy to digest. Think of a baby. You don't want to put anything rough in a baby's tummy, do you want? So that means lean proteins. Less legs, the better in your protein. So chicken breasts and fish would be good too. Please, no booze, I guess. I mean, I'm probably going to have a couple beers during the week of Leadville, but the night before, I think a bottle of Jack Daniels would not be advisable. Caffeine? You can keep up with your caffeine habit. Seems to be okay, even at altitude. All right, next time we get with Roxanne. This is it, folks. The final few hours before and, of course, the hours of race day and how you should be eating. Next time with Roxanne Vogel.
Always terrific stuff from Roxanne. And now I have another list to fill out with my multitude of Leadville rundown reminders, and that is a shopping list.
Well, there's at least one area of nutrition you can leave the thinking to someone else, and that is your convenience foods, the stuff you put in your pockets for the last of your training rides or for race day itself. And for that, let the feed be your guide. They have Leadville race day packs all laid out, ready for you to devour.
Yeah, most notably, you're going to get some Morton energy drinks and energy gels. They really should call this stuff the Leadville Energy Cocktail. It packs calories into your bottle, either the 160 packs or the 320 calorie packs. So while you are hydrating, you are also fueling. I've been using Morton for all of my races this year, as well as for my training, and it has really been taking the stress off trying to ingest dozens of gels or trying to swallow a bar with a dry mouth.
And it's worth noting our podcast listeners can get a great price on a pack curated for Leadville racers, containing a lot of the items we just mentioned. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville for our Leadville pack, and be sure to use the code Leadville15 for a 15% discount. You can also use that Leadville 15 code for buying any amount of Morton at a 15% discount. I'll be using that product, so will Fatty, during all of our races this year.
Yeah, once again, thefeed.com/Leadville, and use the Leadville 15 code at checkout.
Our mountain bike maintenance segment focuses on the blue-collar components of your bicycle, those parts that transfer your pedal strokes to the rear wheel. We're back with Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks, talking about some of those unsung heroes on the bike at times, I think. Drivetrain parts, chains and chain rings and jockey wheels and cassettes. They sit down there and get dirty and do a lot of the dirty work for us.
They do all the work for us,
Yeah,
absolutely.
They really do. So let's, first of all, let's focus in on the chain.
Sure.
Because it's the easiest.
Yeah.
And, every good mechanic and a lot of home mechanics have a chain tool to measure chain. Is there any other way to measure or to tell if a chain is overdone other than a chain tool?
Yes, I'm sure there's a few different ways. When I first started eons ago, you used to be able to use a ruler and sort of go pin to pin. And based on that measurement, you could use your best guess to say my chain is stretched. Ultimately, as more gears have been added onto the back part of our drivetrain, chains have become thinner. Chains have also had to become sort of more flexible side to side to accommodate the extra gears. And now the massive gear range in back, because some of them are as small as 10 and some of them are bigger than 50 at this point and maybe getting bigger and smaller, who knows. So chain stretch is a lot harder to measure without a chain tool. I think even in a sense, a chain tool will only tell you so much. Mostly what I go by on chain is how many miles you have on your chain. I think, at least for me, I've found for road bikes, good rule of thumb is, believe it or not, every 1,800 to 2,000 miles on a chain, if you replace the chain, you may be good with a new chain and it be okay with the rear cassette. Again, more gears on the back, thinner cassette spacing, wider range, thinner chains. No matter which manufacturer tells me their stuff lasts longer, I do find that thinner, more gears, drivetrain parts wear out more quickly.
And that's happening also in the mountain bike world. We're seeing a lot more 12-speed stuff, huge cassettes now, and that all means more stress on the chain, right?
Correct. And when you throw in a suspension design into that, there's a few other forces that are put on there. So, ultimately, I tend to tell people wear your chain and cassette together and replace together. So go 2,500 to 3,000 miles, replace the chain and cassette together. They tend to wear together. A chain ring will typically last a bit longer. Bigger chain rings last longer in a sense. There are more teeth. There's larger area that is supporting the chain more. So there tends to be not as much wear. Also, in a sense of double chain rings, most of us tend to ride on the small, not the big. The small tends to wear a little bit more quickly. So on a 1x system, you can usually get 2 to 3 chains on a chain ring, I've found. And then good indication for when it's time to replace the chain ring. If you're questioning it, a good indication is the chain tooth initially will have sort of more of a delta shape. It may be squared off at the top, which is fine. But when you look at it, it is either sort of straight up and down or delta shaped. An indication that that is starting to wear or beyond its wear point, those teeth that were once straight up or delta shaped now look slightly like a shark fin, sort of hooked in a sense where the chain engages the chain ring teeth under load.
Is that the same case now? We have a lot of narrow, wide, single chain rings now. Do they develop the same pattern, that shark tooth pattern?
They do. It's not as present, or you don't see it as easily as you would on, let's say, a road chain ring, because a road chain ring is a thinner profile. But yeah, you definitely can.
Okay, pick that up. Now, back to the cassette. They do the same thing, right? They get the same shape to them?
So it's not as obvious on the cassette because the teeth are smaller. So what I tend to do is I'll rub my fingers literally across the gears to feel how rough it is, the little burrs that sort of happen over time as the gear becomes more worn. It becomes rough to your fingers. So if you run your hand over it, obviously be careful, you don't want to cut yourself, but you can sort of feel that roughness and wear, and you'll feel it obviously more in the gears that you favor more.
Yeah, I was going to say, the ones you want to check are the ones you ride the most. That's where you should run your finger across.
Absolutely. And if you're a rider like me, it's usually the last 3 or 4 low gears.
Right.
So
yeah, that's okay. We go uphill here in Southern California quite a bit.
So that's downhill for me. So.
Now, I think one of the most overlooked portions of this whole system are jockey wheels. Now, how do we know when jockey wheels are worn out?
Jockey wheels, same kind of thing. You look at tooth profile, they won't sort of be as hooked or won't look as much of a shark fin like a chain ring, but it will look, more for lack of a better phrase, it'll look sharper and similar to a ninja throwing star.
So are these clutch-style derailleurs, are they putting more stress on the entire system or on jockey wheels? What's going on with those locking tension derailleurs?
I think they do. Does it make things wear out more quickly? I don't necessarily think so, but these are guesses. I don't have any practical knowledge other than guessing at most of this stuff. What it does do is it stabilizes your derailleur, so it makes the chain slap more. So in some senses, it controls your system better, which one school of thought is that may actually prolong the life of it. But I would say in most senses, it probably doesn't add or detract too much one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. If we're putting on, replacing any of these parts or all of them, is it okay to do it very close to race day? Is there any reason not to do that?
It's always a tough question to answer because if you give the wrong answer, you get punched in the face by the rider. I would say plan at least 2 weeks ahead to do any major changes. And my point for that is you need to ride the heck out of your bike to make sure everything is good before you know it's good for race day. So changing a shifter cable and housing the day before, certainly not recommended because you will definitely get cable stretch no matter how much you pre-stress that cable after installed. So do all your mechanical repairs, services, at least 2 weeks for something major, and for something that isn't, give yourself at least 5 to 7 days to work out any kinks.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks, if you need further help with your drivetrain, especially chain rings, jockey wheels,
all of it,
cassettes, any of it, it's Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks.
Yes, sir.
Ryan, thanks again.
Thank you.
And next time we meet up with Ryan, we'll dive into the all-important brake bleed and a story I have on why you should leave well enough alone. You probably noticed, too, that our mechanic, Ryan, is brand neutral. He never mentions specific makes or models, but we do. Yeah. So, if you need a new chain, no matter what brand of drivetrain you run, make it a Shimano.
Yeah, it's an easy call as far as I'm concerned, Hottie. My group set head to toe is all Shimano. So running Shimano XTR chain, for example, it's the only and it's the obvious choice. The chain, along with Shimano's new Hyperglide Plus 12-speed cassette, shifts so smoothly. It's just awesome. Shimano says, and I agree with them, that the new XTR chain cassette combo shifts in a third of the time of previous generations. The technical reason is because the cogs are ramped on both sides, which enables the chain to engage two cogs simultaneously during up and down shifts. The effect of this is that it shifts like nothing I have ever experienced on any bike, road or mountain.
Yeah, super great technology there from Shimano, but even if you're not on a full Shimano setup, grab yourself one of their chains. I have done this tons of times. Why? It comes down to trust. Mm-hmm. Who are you going to trust to transfer all that torque going up Columbine without busting a link? The answer is Shimano.
Yep, it absolutely is. Go to bike.shimano.com for more, and we will also have a link in the show notes for this episode at Leadville100podcast.com.
All right, let's wrap up Season 2, Episode 20 of the Leadville podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. Actually, it's powered by Floyd's of Leadville, the show.
That's right.
I think, right?
We've made that
powered.
Change.
Right. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also share it with your other cycling friends and support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible. Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch.
And you can follow us on Twitter. I am at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is at Michael Houghton. You can also find us both on Facebook in the Leadville 100 MTB Participants Group.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the Columbine Climb.
We're ready for Columbine. It's going to be probably a huge shock to the system, doing a 3,000-foot climb, 3 times further than I've ever climbed in my life in a single climb.